Good morning, everyone. Or at least those of you who are here so far.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So it's a little awkward to even get going again. It's like, I don't know. We're heavyweight boxers. We just keep getting hit and knocked down and get back up. We're going to win this fight somehow. So I guess some of you had, depending on where you were, I guess you had, tough times, starting last weekend or whatever, electricity and snow wasn't that bad. I like that part. I don't like not having electricity though. Of course, I was worried like everyone else about the pipes, but we got through that. Anybody out there want to share a horror story? Well, we were all in the same boat, so I guess we empathize. So to get us back on the path to success, for our class and our class only. I can't speak for other instructors or how they're going to conduct their business. I would imagine some of them have a bit more of a challenge than I do. I can just shift things around a little bit, maybe cut something here or there. But if you're a math teacher or a chemistry teacher, something like that, it's going to be a little more difficult on the teacher, but also on the students. So I'll cut you some slack and not make things too hard to, to get back to where we need to be. For the most part, I'm treating last week as though it's just a lost week, and I'll just have to, I have till Saturday to revise the schedule again. But we're just going to stay on track as though that week didn't happen for the most part, with the exception of the due dates that have changed. And I'll figure out how we're going to make up time, later. I guess after midterm. The extension of the final day, I think by one class period or whatever, that'll help a little bit. So don't worry about anything except what's due right now. And what's due right now is the grammar quiz. If you already had taken it, well, more power to you, no pun intended. If you didn't, then it's reopened until Wednesday afternoon. Just to give you, just to give you a little extra, padding in your time in case you have other things to catch up on or whatever. And then the summary of the article that you're choosing will be due, I think, Thursday night. And then the essay I put off until no later than next, I think, Monday. Kind of all shifted by about a week. Share screen real quick. So here's the rescheduling of dates. So that's the Wednesday grammar exam. Now for the grammar exam, if you hadn't taken it, a bunch of you did, but if you hadn't, review things before you take it, because things don't stay fresh when you go away from them for a little bit. Subjects and verbs, verb forms, and the two types of sentence boundary errors, what you're looking for in those in this particular exam. We'll probably, if we have time, we'll probably come back to it, maybe have a grammar exam part 2 or something that'll, um, help you if you don't do as well as you'd like to on this. I can't promise that of timing. And then the summary is on Thursday night, and then the essay for next Monday. Here's that link for the grammar exam. If you haven't taken it, pay no attention to this due date stuff. Thought I changed it, but let's make sure it's open. Get a link here. And then right below, we're essentially in these weeks here. We're moving toward essay number 1. My original plan was to assign this essay and let you do whatever you're going to do with it. So it's sort of diagnostic. If you know what diagnostic means, it means that I get to check and see what you could do without much guidance. I just assigned an essay. Well, after the first hiccup that we had with the network and all that, I changed that to be a little bit more directive because of timing. And so now we had the second hiccup with the snowstorm, the ice storm, whatever. And so we're just really heading right toward essay 1. The process will still be the same. You'll write a summary of an article, then you'll write a response to the article. And I'll explain that in a minute. And then you'll do the same thing for essay 2, and then you'll have compiled 2 sources, but also 2 sets of ideas that you can apply to your discussion of technology and technology in the 2021. And so I've told you before that you should be thinking about it. And both of these, bumps in the road that we have had can provide you with examples of how reliant we are on another pun, reliant we are on technology, because that energy comes from a certain place and it's driven a lot by technology, or the use of technology and the misuse of technology, or the negligent use of technology. So if you had any complaints during the past week that were directly related to that, by companies or systems or whatever, then that's something you can use as an example. Not your personal example, but if you observed how many people were out of electricity or out of running water, the roads and all those kinds of things, you can use all that. And obviously the network stuff you can use as well. So for the summary right here, I hope you all are seeing it. I click on it. It says write a 1 paragraph, about 100 words, a short half page or whatever. Summary of the article you have chosen and read. Write your submission here. So you're actually doing it here. A few of you, maybe 5 or so, have done it. So if you want to offer any advice or critique of how it was to access it, because I can't do it exactly like a student does it. I can see it, but I can't do it. Anybody who did it want to say, well, it caused me such and such problem, so that maybe I can, fix whatever it was? No? All right, so if I go back, let me pretend I'm lying to you. Maybe I am lying to you. Don't know. I'm going to try to view it up here as a student. Let you know what you should be anticipating if it works. Guess it's not going to work for me. Yeah. I'm checking out the snow-capped mountains over here. And the one regret that I have about the storm last week was that I didn't get out and wander beyond what I could see from my house to see, like, the wooded areas coated in snow until it was already melting. I wish I had braved that just to see it, take pictures. So you all can see the summary right here. I'll click on it as a student and we'll see what it shows me. All right, yeah, so if I submit assignment right here, if this is how you see it, I can't trust it. I'm going to theorize that this is how you would see it. And this is where you would put your text. So I don't think it's timed. You don't have a time problem. I didn't do anything. And after that, so you're going to read one of those articles by your choice. After, I mean, you can open all of them and scan it and see what, however you want to choose. Choose two, because you'll have to do another one later, a couple of weeks probably. But choose one for now. Uno. Ein. I don't know how to say, I don't know Italian numbers. So these 4 articles here, 1, 2, oops. Good or bad, mental health effects and impact on culture. Those are your 4 choices. They're a little random. I just did a search and found a few relatively short things to get us going on the discussion. Just no particular ordering or whatever. So you could just close your eyes and pick one. Now, what is a summary? The summary is telling me what that article says, probably in, I don't know, 500 or more words. You're going to tell me what it says in 100 words, no more than 100 words. This is the opposite of a word count that's max. This is, minimum, sorry. This is a max. You don't want to go beyond, because then you're getting beyond summary. Summary means you're putting it into a shorter version. So in order to do that, you have to read the article and figure out what are its main points. It's usually pretty easy with commercially published material, because a lot of times they'll bold things, or they'll put it in bullets, or they'll repeat things. It's not always so easy in academic writing because it's all just plain and you have to kind of weed through it a little bit. Weed's probably not a good word. So in this particular assignment, you're just preparing yourself for essay 1 to say, I understand this article, and then you're going to respond to it. So all the things you find that it says for the essay, you're going to expand it by responding to it. Now, how you do that is on you. And in that way, we're kind of in between that diagnostic place and really an essay. I want to see what you do with it. But the stuff I show you today kind of coerces you toward doing it a certain way through organization. So that brings us, anybody questions about the summary before we move? So this right here, these resources that I put right before this, these are just links and stuff. You know, I'm not really going to look at these two much today. We'll come back to them when we get to the big paper, but they're there for you as a resource. This is just a page I created to put some of my discussion for today in an orderly place or an organized place. So I already have it open right here. Can you see that? Some of this comes from, excuse me, our textbook, and some of it comes from, you know, various places I found, .edu places. That's one of the things that we call reliable and credible when examining source information is where did it come from? And for the most part, as an academic institution ourselves, we trust other academic institutions for the most part. Why for the most part? Well, a lot of those online schools are technically .edus, but they're not as accredited like we are and like most, you know, big schools are. So you have to kind of judge the information you're getting. All right, so what is it that we're writing in this class? Academic essays. This is more or less a vocabulary moment here, so that when I talk about academic writing, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about newspaper writing or article writing or screenwriting or music lyrics writing. It's all different stuff. Have similarities, but they're all different. Business writing, way different. I'm acting as an editor for some medical proposals for the FDA, and it's such different writing from what I'm accustomed to that I got to be careful because I want to change it a lot, but I got to remember it's a different kind of writing. So academic writing is what basically you write about in, for the most part, an institution of higher learning, colleges and junior colleges or universities. So all the subject matter that you're taking are considered academic subjects, right? In a good way. Academic means something good in this context. Studying stuff. So being able to take the information that you're learning, say in a history class or whatever, and compose it and give it back to somebody. That's what academic writing does. You have something to say about the subject matter you're dealing with. So right now, most of you are limited to sort of the core subject matters, right? Math and science or whatever. As you progress, whatever your major is, that becomes sort of the concentration of your discussions. So that's where you start to aim. And, you know, I mean, if you're in nursing, then you might have fewer opportunities to exhibit your skills at writing or the need to write. You'll have some, I know that. I've had students who were nursing, and they would come to me and ask for help with certain assignments. A lot of the same kind of, I don't know what you would call it, like the principles of good communication still apply, even when you're doing a different kind of writing. One slight example that I have from my past is that I had a colleague, a math professor, who often, if not always, I don't know, but often assigned students an essay to write in math, which is kind of odd. But they would have to pick a famous mathematician and write a short, essay about that person, like a biographical essay. I don't know what his purpose was. I'm not a math teacher, but they did have to do writing. This, I don't really remember. This is a whole document that I created so that I could have pieces of information from our textbook without going to the whole textbook. So by highlights, I mean this. It's the same thing as that's on this link here. Just some highlights, meaning briefer. So if I had my notes somewhere, we're going to talk about rhetorical situation before we end today. But the essence of being able to communicate something well begins with, how do I put this gently? Giving a crap. How about that? You have to care about whatever it is that you're writing. So when I talk about the technology issue, you say, well, I don't have any feelings about that. Well, you didn't have any feelings last week about how technology definitely imposed itself upon us, or the failings of technology or whatever. So in academic writing, you sort of have to jump out of your shell of not caring about a lot of things. I'm not saying you all don't or do. That's just kind of a typical thing that I hear a lot from students is I don't care about that much. You can find something to care about for our class. And then when you get to other subject matters, the subject itself will give you the topics, and you have to at least adopt a stance of caring about whatever it is. So that's why I think we're in a good place, because you're part of a technology generation. You were born into it, but you also are witness to some of the changes, some of the possibilities, some of the negatives that could, affect us either soon or longer term. Your children or whatever. What can you imagine for your children if you plan to have children? Think about those things and decide whether you care. I mean, I guess it would be like you have to think about, this is just one topic. Let's say I had chosen the environment. And that's a big, broad topic. What are you going to write about? The global warming? You're going to write about, conservation of trees and forests? Or you're going to write about pollution? Just a wide range. So you have to do some thinking about it to decide what affects you mentally or intellectually. If nothing does, like I said, that's oftentimes a thing that people say. I don't know, you have to shake yourself from your intellectual slumber. Wake up and say, well, even if it's just for now, I have to give a crap about whatever it is. So that's where you start. Figuring out why you care personally, you, every one of you. Why do I care? What are my experiences? How does it affect the world? So any other topic that you could think of that maybe you feel more strongly about? I don't know, some social issues or whatever, poverty or I don't know, education. Any of those are probably going to be, I hate to say absolutes, but for the most part, I can't think of a topic that technology doesn't play into it. If you talk about social injustice and the protest of whatever, the recent craziness at the Capitol Hill in January, technology played a big part in that. If it's still playing a big part because we're still getting new videos and all those cameras that took, whether it's cameras that were mounted or people's personal cameras, they're tweeting and they're posting things on Facebook or whatever about their events, the events and their own exploits. Technology played right into that. If we go all the way back to last year's summertime protest about the police brutality and I guess it started with George Floyd. I'm not sure if there was something before that, but technology played right into it. So my point being that any topic that you prefer to think about, well, you can think about it in relation to technology. All right, so once you've thought about it, as your book tells you right here, if you can see it on, oops, that didn't work. I'm not getting bigger. We'll talk a lot about this word when we revisit Toulmin, but having a claim, what's your conclusion? What is it that you want to say about this thing that irritates you or makes you feel good or whatever it is? Your claim is really important because that says that you have an investment. And damn it, if you're not gonna, say something about it. Remember, if we went back to chapter 1, all the different ways that we are, the different types of argument we do, and one of them was proposal, if you recall. So you feel a certain way about it. Let's say something happened to you last week. My wife kept saying this one, and I saw some people on TikTok said the same thing. But why is it that there's an answer to this, by the way? Why is it that we live in Southeast Texas where people run their air conditioners long during the summer? We don't have these power issues, but then we have a 1 week snowstorm with people need their heat and the electricity companies freak out. So if you were without electricity and you said something to that effect, like what the fudge is going on, then you have an investment in this. You don't like to be in the cold or the dark. So it matters. The answer to that, by the way, is that companies were dumping their electricity because they had an over surplus or whatever. So then when they needed it, they didn't have it available. So you have to have a claim. So between now and before you write your actual essay, if you're doing your summary, don't be thinking about how it makes you feel too much. I mean, you can't avoid it. You're just reading what this person has, whatever the writer has to say about it. Make sense? And you're just trying to figure out, that's all the summary is doing, is trying to figure out what that person has to say about the issue. In your response, that's when you start thinking, well, how do I feel about this and why? And I can't encourage you enough to be thinking about how it affects you personally. I mean, that's fine. That's good. You can use your personal experiences, but how you're an example of, like you don't live on an island, you are whatever, you remember demographics. Well, you represent a southeastern Texas person. right? You represent a young person in college. Both of those things matter when you're discussing technology and its effects on you, whether it's because of energy or because of access to online materials, which COVID has largely put us in that place. So I'm cheating a little bit by letting you know that there's an obvious route that you could take. And I've said it a couple of times, sort of in passing, but technology is great. We all love it. But when it doesn't work, for whatever reasons, it ranges from annoying to life-threatening. So I'll be thinking about those things. And all the range in between. If you can't text your friend, that's fine. If your mother can't text you or find out where you are, then it gets a little more serious, and a little more anxiety producing, worrisome. If communication goes out with our first responders, then you're talking about people's lives are at stake. So anyway, you're starting with a claim that you have to make about whatever you feel about the topic, and everything is a range. Remember that when we talk. That's my rhetorical triangle. See, triangle? It's kind of like a triangle. It's not really a triangle, but whatever. I have a student, a former student, who asked me to write a letter of recommendation for, this is a different one than I mentioned last time we talked, for nursing, for the pre-nursing. And it was from last year. She was my student last year. So I asked her, well, remind me who you are. I mean, I have a lot of students, and, give me a context of the class that we had together. And she told me, she says, oh, I was such and such, and I sat so and so place, or whatever. And I thought, oh yeah, now I do remember. And she said, I also was the one who wanted to write about, or she did write about the idea that time, the way we keep time, is a construct, meaning we make it up. It doesn't really exist, right? And the one thing that I kept, questioning her on, and I thought that's great. That's creative thing. I'm not creative, but critical thinking. Challenging the way we look at things, right? So you have a deadline to meet. Well, it's all arbitrary. It's all just made up, like turn in your grammar, do your grammar thing by Wednesday afternoon. It's just, what's Wednesday afternoon? Well, we gotta wait till the sun comes up twice more, right? So the idea that time is a construct is an interesting way to think about things. But what about it is what I kept having to ask her. What's your claim about that? That's kind of a fact. I mean, the idea that the sun comes up, at a certain series of revelations or whatever, those are facts as well. And the idea that we impose upon them certain things. But what about it? What are you saying about it? So that was the difficulty with her subject matter. It's like, well, what are you saying that's debatable? And that's what your claim is. Your claim is whatever you want to say. Maybe we need to do something, propose something, or maybe evaluate by saying, the government, whether it's the big government, the federal government, or smaller, state governments or whatever, have failed in their need to provide for their citizens. So now you're evaluating. I think I'm going to sneeze. Hold on. Sorry about that. So you're starting with a claim is just a fancy way to say, what do you feel about it that somebody might disagree with? Your text here says you don't want to debate something with, everybody already agrees with you. I see these things on TikTok and they're interesting, but as a teacher, I question them a little bit. I don't actually question them in my mind. Atheists who are on TikTok and, explaining their views or, whatever, attacking the other views. And oddly enough, I feel that is like preaching to the choir. I know that's an irony, it's a flip-flop, but preaching to the choir is just a metaphor for talking to people who already feel the way you do. What's the point, right? Your audience. Now, in some cases, they have audience who argues with them or, basically says, I pray for your soul kind of thing. But in order to really achieve any kind of communication, who are they really talking to except people who are already predisposed to believe them? So I think it's the subject matter. There's, you shouldn't really talk about people's belief systems because there's no way to deal with in facts and stuff like that. Anyway, we try not to do topics such as those so that you can figure out what you have to say and have a reasonable audience who, if you've had me before, I always talk about the middle. So if you're directly in the middle, right? The middle, here we are in the middle, and then we spread out and this hand over here is the extreme view one way and this hand's the extreme view the other way. Forget about these people, even if they agree with you. Like I said, the atheist thing, forget about them. You don't care about them. They already see it your way. And these people way over here who don't see it your way, forget about them. You're just aiming for that, about like that in the middle. You just want to give some people to think about whatever you're writing who maybe don't have a real strong investment or they don't have a strong feeling about it. And so I guess it's a lot like salesmanship or salespersonship. When you got somebody on the hook before you start reeling them in. I don't want to talk bad about salespeople. That's what they do. All right. The rhetorical triangle. If you had me before, this is old news to you. It's in the textbook. Does anybody want to offer like with the rhetorical triangle, the rhetorical communication triangle? If you look at your textbook, it's more complicated than just triangle. It's almost like a circular kind of thing. Anybody remember? Who are the three participants in an active communication? The broad sort of umbrella terminologies, sender. Well, let's start with the signal. We have a signal. We want to say something. There's something. Please send a taxi to whatever. I'm showing my age there. Or you have something to communicate. Not you, just in general. Then you have somebody who wants to communicate it. We call them the sender. And then the one who wants to get it, we call the receiver. Sender, receiver, signal. That's not our terminology. That's just sort of the broad terminology. If you're giving a speech, you'd be called a speaker. You'd have subject matter, topic, whatever. And you'd have an audience, where that audience would consist of. So let's say I was a former member of the Trump administration who's got a tell-all book coming out. You know, I'm going to expose all the dirty secrets. And I'm sitting in front of an audience full of people with MAGA hats on and flags and all that stuff. Well, I got to remember my audience. And so I have to, as a speaker, I would have to conduct or formulate what I have to present to them in such a way that I know that they're going to be possibly a hostile audience. And by hostile, I don't mean necessarily violent or anything, but they're against what I have to say about their former leader. Likewise, if I were in a room full of people that, for whatever reason, the demographics were more sided with me or against Trump, I would have to construe, conduct my business, whatever I have to say, in such a way that I'm being informative for that particular audience. So that's what the rhetorical triangle is. It's just remembering that you're a person, you're sending it to a person, and you have something to say. Well, the most part, your subject matter is provided to you by the academic circumstances. Everybody get that? For the most part. So if we were in a history class, I'm going to ask you to write about the effects of the Vietnam War on late 20th century diplomacy, whatever. And so I'm giving you your subject matter, and I want you to give me back certain things. But the fact that you are of, a certain age, I doubt that your sex would matter too much. I don't know. Of course, since then, women take a more active role or are allowed a more active role in the military. So maybe that could be played into it if you're a female. And so on, the demographics of yourself, if you come from a not poor, but you're not rich kind of background, you'll know that those who get to fight the wars are generally from your demographic. For the most part, we don't send our rich kids off to die or to fight, for the most part. So that would have an impact upon you as part of that rhetorical triangle, as part of a younger generation. When you're going to talk about world diplomacy. Hope that matters, not matters, but makes sense to you all. So that I'm not just blah, 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 blah. But really understanding who you are in context of who you're trying to reach, which is me, as your audience for this class, or your history professor for the audience of that class. But in general, what you're really trying to do is, if we scroll down a little bit, you're trying to make an academic argument which thinks of your readership, not as Mr. Schmidt or as your history teacher, but as a representative of a bigger community of thinking people about the subject matter. Hey, I didn't even realize this. So when we talk about academic argument, what this is pointing out to you right here, this part up here, is that all that reliable and credible stuff plays into it. Like, who is telling me something? Where am I getting my information? So academic argument is all about having something to say about an issue, because you could sit around all day long and complain with your mom and your pop and your brothers and sisters and your neighbors or whatever about the electric companies, or how your internet went out. Nobody gives a poop, right? You all do in that moment. But to reach a broader audience, an academic audience, you have to think about it in ways where you're going to find real, verifiable information that you can bring into your discussion. That's the heart of academic argument. I'm going to, right here it says, I can't highlight, but right here, it's an appeal to reason and research, source material, people who know about this issue. So the fact that you didn't have electricity last week is not anybody else's concern. It's a bigger concern, right? It mattered to you at the time and to your family. To you, start with you. If you're without electricity, you're in a cold and darkness and all that. Well, that's affecting you personally. Now, what can you say about it in the bigger, what we call the global sense? So that's what academic argument's about. What I find interesting, just pay attention here. I didn't do this on purpose, by the way. I probably never read this or I forgot it. Pew Internet Project. We might be able to use this information. Remember it. 87% of American adults now use the internet. And the more money you make, the more likely you are to use the internet. And the younger you are, the more likely you are to use the internet. So among your age group, there's almost nobody who doesn't use the internet regularly. And you'd probably say those 3% of people who probably very rural, or they have some kind of, belief system that keeps them from using it. I'd say this is probably up from whenever this was written, right? This book is, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. 68% of adults connect to the internet with mobile devices. That's got to be way up. Just some statistics to keep in mind from our textbook. Oh, look at this, didn't open up. Same information, I'm just showing you the longer version. Should be longer. Maybe it's the same information. In our textbook, by the way, there's a graphic of the rhetorical situation. Purdue OWL, those of you who've had me before know it's sort of my go-to as an online source place for academic writing. You'll be required to write in a lot of different formatting styles. I choose MLA because it's a humanities formatting and I'm a humanities teacher. But this link to Purdue, if you had me before, you're sick of hearing about Purdue OWL. If you haven't had me before, well, I'm just offering you a resource. You don't have to use it. It's not a requirement. But we'll be looking at Purdue OWL in more depth when we get to, formatting issues, probably Thursday. That's just why the link is here for you to see. So what I have here, just really quickly, well, I can show you this. I didn't really want to pull all this up. This thing won't move. I'm gonna move this thing. There it goes. Linking. So just sort of steps to get to, I don't think you're gonna be able to see that, so I'm gonna stop it. Hello, everyone. Saying hello because a lot more of you are here than when I said hello before. So in the interest of some of you who might be more visual, you like PowerPoints or um, seeing things. Here's some of the same information. I thought this was interesting because if you look at it, it gives you sort of an example of the tone, which is important, that academic writing often has. It doesn't feel like it's emotionally, like the writer is emotionally involved. It's just stating things in sort of a dry, kind of straightforward way. So you can read over this just to see types of style, the way you use language. Um, this, by the way, is not MLA stuff. Oh, here we are repeating some of that stuff. Who's your audience? Now, if you had me before, this is old news, but audience is a theory or an abstract. You're not really writing toward any particular person or set of people. You're thinking of a type. So, not really an English professor. You're not writing to me, but you're writing to somebody who's involved in the academic community who, as a teacher of this, I don't have I don't have a dog in the fight of a history class or whatever. I'm just about it all. So your tone is related to who you think of as your audience. And the types of language or style comes directly from your tone. So you don't ever want to be sarcastic. You don't want to ever directly address your reader like it's a person there. All these things are related to the language you use to establish a tone to satisfy a particular audience. The content, it comes from various places, but because it's academic writing, lots of times you go find it elsewhere and then you pull it together and you weave it into this thing. But in that process, you also have this, not mine, yours, your head, your experiences, the way you feel about things, because of your past experiences. All that is pertinent, it's relevant, it's useful. And that gives you your perspective on it, your personal perspective. Aim is another word for purpose, right? So what am I trying to achieve? And I'm going to show you some of this, but in my own terms. So, I mean, you can look at it here on your own, but basically it's all the same stuff. There's the three parts of the process of writing or communicating is pre, drafting, and then post drafting or, revising. I'll come back to that in a second. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. How do I go back? Anybody know? There, back button. So thinking about your subject matter, deciding how you feel about it. That's these three right here. And then finding out the information. Now for this first writing assignment, it's just a response writing. So you don't have to go find proof of your personal feelings about it. You're just responding directly to one piece based upon your own experiences and your own thoughts. So this one doesn't quite apply right now. Well-supported points, except if you have logical and rational reasons to believe how you feel. And so this gets into more like what you're going to be doing long-term. Obviously, this is the post stuff. Well, I almost want to skip this, but I'll tell you, I have students who write essays that are one paragraph long or one thing long. They don't indent from the get-go, and it just goes all the way to the last period. Paragraphs are how we divide our ideas. So that's really dependent upon your organizational skills. You have to look at your idea. Now, this first piece is a response piece, and I wanted to talk about this. One way that you might order your body paragraphs is by points. So if that writer's making points in the article, then you might just attack them, or not attack, but address them point by point. You don't have to, but that's one way you could. If they don't make points that are clearly divided or divisible that way, well, then you can arrange it into the points as you see them. Maybe 3 reasons why we need to be careful with technology, or 3 reasons why technology has affected us in positive ways, or 1 reason why it's affected us in positive ways, 2 ways it's affected us in negative ways. That's really your how you decide to organize what it is, whatever it is that you have to present. You may, there's no law on how to present this stuff. Paragraphs and the ultimate organizational arrangement that you decide, and we'll look at outlines later, but is going back largely dependent upon what your purpose is. So you might want to tell me a story. I asked you all earlier, a horror story that you might have had because of the snow and the ice and the power outage and all that. That might be a good way to start your body paragraphs, to retrace your family's ordeal or whatever, if it's related to what you want to say about technology and our reliance on technology. These are just samples of writing. So I'm going to leave the PowerPoint to you all to, I'm going to leave it some kind of way. Not that. How do I get out of here? Help me out. There we go. So I'll take us back to my summary here to round us out for today. On Thursday, we'll talk more about presentation and the actual assignment. So just some steps. They're very much related to the 7 steps we just saw in that PowerPoint. Establish what it is that you're writing about. Now, this is not part of the writing. This is part of the pre-writing. What it is that you're writing about and how much you understand it to whatever extent you need to. What does that mean? Well, for this first writing, I don't expect you all to know everything there is to know about technology or to have all kinds of facts at your disposal. You're just thinking about it based upon your own experiences as a 19, 20-year-old, whatever it is. You probably haven't spent much of your life without technology being very directly evident right there. being very crucial. So think about that. And your experiences will range. Some of you might have had, parents who were not very committed to parenting. So they sit you in front of a TV and let you watch TV all day or movies or whatever. So second thing is to think, to take and think about how the subject matter and your personal experiences are related. If you had me in the past and we did the cultural identification thing, it's the same thing. Like now it's not about you. It is about you, but it's not just about you. So how does your experiences relate to the bigger, issue or whatever? Decide what you want to achieve. What do you want to say? Are you trying to move your audience to, oops, there's a typo there, to do something, to write their Congress people, or just to feel a certain way about it, to be more mindful when they're texting and driving or not texting and driving. And then you're going to write. And if you're a very studious writer, meaning that you care, you'll probably rewrite before you submit something. And so Thursday, these are some of the things I'm going to go over on Thursday: formatting, source integration, speaker tags, attributive phrases, which are the same thing. Your book uses the term attributive phrase. I'll talk about using those. Just giving you guidance. On Thursday, I'm going to give you some guidance, a little bit of a cheat, because we don't really have time for me to diagnose, to look at what you can do without my guidance. So I'm going to make sure that you sort of in a checklist fashion, have a clear understanding of what it is that you're supposed to be submitting presentation-wise. That's Thursday, what we'll do. Some of you, it will be old news. It'll be review. Nothing wrong with that. The link I just opened right here from Owl Purdue, or Purdue's Owl, is just something directly related to rhetorical situation. Nothing that I haven't talked about. It's just the same information, just presented differently. The one thing that it's pointing out is that rhetoric, you might hear the word rhetoric used pejoratively, meaning to be negative, like, oh, that's a bunch of rhetoric. Same way that some people use academic, but that's not how we're using it. Rhetoric is just the art or the skill of persuasion. So that's all that. Any questions? I know I've been babbling. I guess I have to do that to catch us up. I try to be repetitive on purpose. I try to say the same thing a bunch of times. That's not supposed to be home. So that you hear important elements. Anybody need me to show you where links are before I leave this page? I need to find where things are before I go to attendance. Let me. I'm going to stop the share. And then we'll do attendance. right, where is it? That's it. Shamalis. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. Do this now. Gotta take attendance. All right, so attended. I'm delative. Not here. Jihad. Ariane.
Here.
Lataria. Cook.
Here.
Kiana Eagleton.
You got me. I said here.
Who's that?
Brooks.
Yeah, I got you. Kiana Eagleton. No. Caitlin Evans.
Here.
Xavier.
Here.
Anaya. Finnegan. Yeah. Haley.
Here.
Alyssa. Oh, wait, look, I can see you over here. Alyssa. Terrence. Kendrick. Hobbs. You can go once I call your name, by the way. Ariane.
I'm here.
Michaela. Michaela. Upside down guy. Miranda.
Mirandy. How you doing? I'm good.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Kiana.
Here.
Jaleese. Oh, Jaleese. Ruben. Phyllis.
Here.
Jameson.
Here. Can you hear me?
Janacia. Khalees. No Khalees. Victor. Gotcha. Ananda. Am I saying your right name? Ananda?
Victor's here, my bad.
Who said that?
Victor.
Victor. You're good.
All right, thank you, sir.
Smith. Ananda.
I'm here.
Justin.
I'm here.
Gotcha. Kiana.